Hey, what's going on, everyone? I saw something this week that blew me away. I watched several things, but this video is going to be about one movie in particular. And that movie is, of course, Collateral. Let's talk about it. So I am about 20 years too late to the party, and I found myself feeling as if this movie just came out. It feels fresh, it feels alive, there's a real pulse to it. And those are the best movies, I think. Movies that you can watch any time period and they feel as fresh as as though they just came out. That's something to pay attention to. It's certainly what prompted me to want to talk about this movie. I really appreciated it. I really enjoyed it. I was riveted. I was on the edge of my seat for a lot of it. And surprisingly, I found a tremendous amount of emotion in the film in a way that's unexpected and a lot. And Heat, Michael Mann's other film, that's super iconic and ridiculously good. There is an odd warmth to this film that it doesn't feel like it should be in this movie, but it's there. It's right in there. I'll explain what that means. What I mean by that is there is, if you don't know, the film stars Tom Cruise as Vincent, Jamie Foxx as Max, and the two of them are on a collision course. It's like they are a unpredictable chemical reaction. You put these two elements in a jar and then watch them explode and watch them do stuff. That's exactly what this movie is. For the bulk of the movie, the two of them are in a car, in a taxi, and you get to see the two of them bounce ideas off each other, and you learn about them through each other. And so that's what I mean. But oddly, they're at odds, but there is a warmth between them. There's a weird sort of bond that's happening. And for those of you who don't know, Jamie Foxx plays Max, who's a taxi driver, and he has to escort Tom Cruise's Vincent around town. They've got to make 5 stops before Vincent is done with his work in LA, and then he'll leave the next morning. The surprising thing about this, the hook, I think, of this movie is the taxi driver is not driving around just a regular old passenger who's in town on a sort of run-of-the-mill business trip. Well, he is, but the passenger's business is not typical in that this guy is a trained assassin. So Vincent is an assassin for hire, and his work is to assassinate some people while he's in town. That is the plot of the movie. That's sort of the A plot. Meanwhile, the B plot, you've got detectives and federal agents trying to figure out what's going on when bodies start dropping. That's the B plot. These detectives are led by Mark Ruffalo, who I was super surprised to see in this movie. I was like, what the heck, Ruffalo? It took me a few seconds to clock that it was him. But once I did, I was like, oh man, this movie is excellent. This is Mark Ruffalo. What the heck? He is just as good as in leading the B plot of this movie. So that's what's going on. That's what this movie is about. You got an assassin. You got a cab driver who's an unwilling accomplice. And you've got detectives and federal agents trying to figure out what the deal is with these bodies dropping and stuff. And this movie takes place over the course of one night. So like any movie that takes place over the course of a day or a night, it's almost like you put like you put some like dynamite and you lit a fuse and it's packed in this barrel, whatever it is. It's going to be a serious explosion because you've got this, the walls are contained. Your stuff is packed in this thing. So something's just going to bust out serious. Any movie like that, that's what it is. That's the energy. You think of films like Do the Right Thing, takes place really over the course of a day. Die Hard, a whole bunch of films. 12 Angry Men, another fantastic example, which I'm going to talk about on this channel at some point. The original 12 Angry Men, the 1956 version, not the... Well, I'm sure the 90s version is good too, but that's only because it's based on... It's a remake of a 1956 situation that's fantastic, but also the play is ridiculous. So the story was already ridiculous, but it takes place in one room over the course of one day, one situation, and tensions flare up, things rise, and it reaches a crescendo, and it's way serious, and it's very well done. Collateral is the exact same way. It takes place over the course of one evening. You got two guys in a car, and even when they're not in the car, there's a sense of claustrophobia. Like they're in each other's orbits, for better or worse, throughout the course of this movie. Neither of them is getting away from each other, and you're in this from the car to wherever they're at. It's this confined situation where they're forced to deal with each other, and things come to a head. There is a crescendo, and that's what you've got. And it's very well done. The first thing I really want to get into that I noticed just in watching the movie before things really get going is the look of the film. So this movie came out in 2004, and that is a particular period in the lifespan of film, meaning that is that time, around that time, the early 2000s is where digital making began to take off. You look at films like Attack of the Clones, George Lucas's Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. He was really doing a lot of pioneering work with digital video. You look at 2003's Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Robert Rodriguez was another huge champion of digital, making the switch from film to digital. And the look is very specific. And then 2004, here we are with this particular film, though, there were certain shots I noticed that felt like almost like student films. And I say that because, not in a bad way. This is look, there's some really good student films out there from the early 2000s. I know. I was in a film class that year. And I've seen a lot of my classmates, filmmaking class, where a lot of my classmates made films shot on digital. And they were very good. That was my first year actually making movies for real, like trying to get into the process of filmmaking with, writing scripts, pitching the films, forming a crew with my classmates, and shooting on digital. The cameras we had access to were digital cameras. And seeing certain shots in this movie, it brought up some nostalgia for me. Like, oh wow, I like the look of certain shots. There was like a gritty graininess to them that was so specific to the energy of this particular film. Now, the whole movie isn't shot in digital, but a lot of it is. And you see it particularly in shots, certain areas that are lit interestingly because of everything's dark. It takes place over the course of a night. So you have to light things in a creative way to show things differently. And certain shots of Tom Cruise, certain shots of Jamie Foxx, you can see the grit. You can see what the quality of it looked like. I just was like, oh, wow, it's really cool to see this sort of major film. It didn't feel polished. And I liked that. It didn't feel like super Hollywood glitz and shiny. It was like, it had a dirtiness to it, like a grit to it, that I think when you consider the setting of this movie taking place in LA at night, and not Hollywood. This mess takes place in like the underbelly of LA, away from the glitz and the glamour, away from all the lights and the stars and all the beauty. There is a dark beauty, really, in a way, of how LA is captured the alleyways, the abandoned streets, the empty sort of the empty roads, and just these other crannies of LA, these nooks and crannies that they found. The filming of some of the location sequences is complemented by the digital shots. Excellent, excellent. So I really appreciated that. I loved that. I liked that it sort of added an element of authenticity to it. It captured like real LA, like the down and dirtiness of it, which is it adds as a backdrop for this story. It elevates the story in a way you don't think about it, but that's exactly if it's doing its job, you feel it though. And that's one of the things I loved a lot about this movie. The look of it, excellent. The acting, come on. Look, I'm just come out and say it. I think that Tom Cruise turns in one of the strongest performances, I think, of his career. And that's not a statement I make lightly. I've seen a lot of his performances. I think it's up there. Probably, I would say probably in the top 5 performances. Les Grossman is another one from Tropic Thunder. I think he's fantastic in Top Gun Maverick. He's got, I remember him. He was great in Rain Man. You know, I saw that movie dozens of times since I was a kid. And seeing it as an adult, you understand Tom Cruise got the chops, dude. Like, people forget because he's so, when you think of Tom Cruise these days, you think of him as the stuntman extraordinaire. All of his work in Mission Impossible and any action movie he's involved, or any movie that requires some level of stunt or action or whatever, Tom Cruise's abilities are overshadowed by the jack of all trades that he has become known for as, in recent years. But the man can act his behind off, and he's so good as Vincent. So chilling and makes you feel uncomfortable, and yet you also feel comfortable around him in a way. Oddly, he's charming, he's charismatic, he's confident. You feel like you can in a different set of circumstances, you could be this guy's friend. It's a travesty that he wasn't awarded anything for this role. He was very good. And one half of the barrier, or the sort of bar to hang this film on, Tom Cruise alone, this could have been a great movie if it's just like a standalone character study. But you have Jamie Foxx, who's not a slouch in this movie. If you have Tom Cruise coming with some, you have to come with it going up against Tom Cruise. And I think Jamie Foxx certainly rises to the occasion as Max. He gives an understated, measured performance that is pretty consistent throughout the film and doesn't really expand until he has to, until the story requires him to. It's written this way, but the way Jamie Foxx plays it, it's good. It's just, it's good. And it's a perfect contrast to Tom Cruise, who's this buttoned up, he's calm, collected, very good at what he does. Guy who is about the work, and that's it. That's all. He's there for that. But Max is also very good at his job too. So in an odd way, you have a perfect pairing of two men who are good at what they do, who are at odds. And yet they are the perfect foil for one another because each of them has something that the other lacks. Jamie Foxx is this tremendously, painfully human guy who's scared, nervous, kind of neurotic a little bit. He has dreams, but he's not really doing enough to achieve them. He's complacent also in his position. You find he's been doing his job for 12 years, longer than you feel like he would have wanted to be doing that job, because he wants to be doing something else. He has dreams to be doing something else. But 12 years is a while. You could call that a career. 12 years that's your career, man. That's not a temporary situation like Max says it is. In contrast, you got Vincent, who is a doer. He's action based. He's not all about the talking too much. It's very much what's right in front of him. This, do that, done. On to the next thing. There's not a lot of room for him to sort of imagine and dream about what his life could be outside of this job. So it's a good contrast. And he feels robotic in a way. He's like personable. He's kind a little bit. He's personable, but also he's kind of cold. Jamie Foxx, on the flip side, is, there's an inner warmth about him, but he's not as aggressive, not as assertive. And so throughout the course of the film, both of them sort of become each other in some way, which is what leads to how things end up. You watch this movie and you're thinking about how at some point one of them is going to win or lose based on their interactions with each other. You only get that, and it would only have happened if those two particular people were in each other's orbit. They win or lose because they interacted with each other, and pieces of each other rub off on both of them. And I think that's what happens. That's why the movie ends up being what it is, which is a good character piece, I think, for both characters, because you start understanding things about them through each other, through their dialogue, which, by the way, which brings me to the writing. The dialogue in this movie is so good, so layered, that not everything needs to be spelled out. It's such a well-written situation. It's a great script. I want to find the script just so I can study it. It's that good. It's on the level of like Chinatown, another great movie, great script. It's where there's words in the script that are so loaded, and things that you can infer, you can guess at things that are not spelled out in the movie. Those are the best things, because the subtext is enough. I think what you see on screen and what they say and how characters react, it gives you all, if you're paying attention, you're getting a world of other stuff that you're feeling. And whether you're right or wrong is not the issue, because whatever you're feeling based on what you see, that's correct. It's correct. It's like there's things that the filmmakers and stuff have set up that serves as material for the actors to get, like, that's correct for them, but we don't have access to that. All we have is what we see and what we hear. As an audience member, whatever you guess at based on what's said, I think is right. That's just how I see it. So I think the dialogue, particularly between each conversation between Max and Vincent, as the film goes along, gets deeper and deeper, and more is revealed about each other, and in a way that's not, and it's not info dumpy. There's not exposition heavy stuff. It's stuff that's pointed to the characters and makes total sense. You don't question it. You go with it, and it works. The action is great. There's not a ton of action in this movie, but when it does show up, it's not a boring movie. So I think, even the dialogue scenes are action. It's like, it feels like an action sequence. That's how good it is. And when you see actual action sequences, it's very well choreographed and well shot. You don't question for 1 minute where everything is happening on the screen. There's no shaky cam stuff. There's none of that. You see clearly what's happening, who is showing up, where everybody is in relation to each other, spatially. All that stuff is clear, and that makes it better. And it helps that when the action is actually well performed, like it's well choreographed, but it's well performed by people on screen. So you may know if you know anything about this movie, the training for everything in this movie was extensive. And so it looks believable. Like it's real. You don't question it. It doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like this is like for real. Like one of the things I thought was interesting about this movie is that it really keeps you on your toes, just because tonally, you don't know really. If you know nothing about this movie, I think going in cold, you have a sense of the energy of the movie, but you don't really know. And then when things start happening, you might question. Personally, I questioned the dynamic. I love the dynamic between Max and Vincent, but there are elements about it that I question. Why, if you're at odds with this assassin who you have to drive around, why would you have these sort of they're oddly heartfelt conversations between the two of them. They're talking about their upbringing at one point. They're talking about their philosophies and just their ideologies, how they think about stuff, their morals. It's so interesting that there's something about it that feels it's questionable. Like I don't quite know how I would describe it. It was just more like, why are you guys? I think similarly for Vincent, if this is a guy who you're trying to manipulate into doing your bidding so that you can get your work done, you don't really care about this guy, do you? And yet there is an element where Vincent feels like he at least appreciates something about Max. It's more than just like he might start out trying to manipulate Max at the beginning, but that's not how it ends up. There is a sense of he kind of cares about Max a little bit. He cares enough to ask questions about his life, or even to ridicule him for how he lives his life. Like there's a bit of care, and there's a defending in it. Like he's being defensive about his own actions, because obviously Max doesn't particularly care for the fact that Vincent is a contract killer. That's not cool to Max. He doesn't really agree with that. And in his expressing that, questioning that, Vincent has a way how he rationalizes what he's doing. And it's like, it's not that big a deal to him in that way. That's just his work. That's his particular line of work that he's in. But in that, he's defending himself too. He is a little bit taken, like he's a little bit bothered by the fact that, you're judging me. You can't even do the stuff that you're talking about doing. Your dreams, you're not going to do anything you're talking about. So he's challenging Max too. So you have to care a little bit to want to challenge somebody, I feel like. So therein lies there's an odd thread with the relationship. They're at odds. They don't like each other, but there's something about it. There's an odd respect. Because at some points, Max has to sort of delve into the things that make Vincent tick. He has to become Vincent a little bit in order to get through the night. If he's going to survive the night, he has to borrow some elements of what make Vincent Vincent. He has to, and he wouldn't have done, and that gets him to a place where he has to rise to different challenges. He's being challenged, and for 2/3 of the movie, he does not rise to the challenge. He can't, for whatever reason. He's afraid. He doesn't have it in him to do it. But at some point, that shifts. Part of his arc is that, like, he has to borrow from Vincent to rise to these different challenges that are being thrown at him, to meet them. Conversely, Vincent starts out as a mechanical sort of robot almost. He's kind and charming in a way that to get what he needs done, to get his needs met. But in dealing with Max, something in him is sort of being reawakened. His humanity, his care in a way, oddly. And to get through the night, he also, for better or worse, he ends up borrowing from Max too. Whatever the things that humanity and the care and the kindness that make Max tick somehow gets impressed on Vincent in some ways too. It doesn't look the same, but it does come up in different ways. If you see them, if you're paying attention, you get to see the different ways the two people have to borrow from one another to get to these other stages of their arcs as characters. And it's just really great stuff. I want to watch it again. I think I may put it on again, watch some sequences today. But yeah, dude, this movie is fantastic. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Highly, highly recommend it. It's a good movie. I think as far as Michael Mann movies go, I haven't seen all of his filmography. I've seen a few of his movies. Heat right now to me is still his best movie, but Collateral is if it's not a close second, it's right. It's like it's not a full step down. It's like a half a step. It's pretty close to Heat, I think, to me. It's one of those good movies where every character is compelling. Nothing feels wasted. No dialogue feels wasted. No scene feels wasted. Everything feels like it should be there. You know, you watch some movies where, you know, you that part could have been cut, or this line of dialogue could have been cut. Everything here is fantastic and plays up, like, oddly, every actor rises to the occasion to play these characters, where you can feel them stretching. Like, this isn't a role that we see a lot from Tom Cruise, the role of Vincent. It's not a role we see a lot from Jamie Foxx. Although in a different world, Jamie Foxx might have been Max in a different situation from a more comedic perspective. There is a comedy element in it. There is some humor in this movie, and you could see it dip further if it were an action comedy. It's not that, but if it were, Jamie Foxx would be right in line with it. But really, you know, Fox rises to the occasion. Jada Pinkett rises to the occasion. And Mark Ruffalo rises to the. Everybody in this movie is not a joke. Another thing I will say, just as an aside, what's really cool about the character of Vincent, I think, I watched the day before that. I'd seen Night and Day, the movie with action comedy movie with Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz. Fun movie. It's, you know, whatever, one of the mill. It's a fun action comedy movie, but it's interesting to see that, and then right after, you know, pretty soon after that, watch this movie, because he's like the dark version of that. Vincent is like the dark version of Roy, who's like this, you know, secret agent dude, who also good at his job, but he's a good guy. Or Ethan Hunt, or any other action hero that Tom Cruise has played. Vincent is the antithesis of that. He's like the dark. He's that. He's like if what Ethan Hunt and Roy Miller and all these dudes he played would have been if they were bad guys. Super efficient, very good at his job, economical in how he moves, almost like a predator. There's like this. He stalks the space. He stalks the room. He's like a shadow. He'll move in, strike, and get out of there, which is a lot of what all these action. Jack Reacher is another one. He's the dark version of those characters, and it was particularly cool to see that after Night and Day, which is such a light and bubbly, fun, romantic. He has romance to it movie compared to this, where it's just like he's intense. He's not playing around at all. When he's nice, he's nice, whatever. But when he's on the job, Vincent is not a joke. So, yeah. In fact, it's an interesting, I think, experiment to watch a movie where he's being a good guy, and then watch this movie. So, yeah, this is a side thought. Yeah, the movie's great. I highly recommend it. If you've stuck around this long to the end of the video, thank you for your time. There's a ton of other things you could be doing. If you've come across this video and decided to watch it, thank you. All right, that's going to be it. Got another video coming up pretty soon, so stay tuned. In the meantime, take it easy.